Good evening and welcome to the Curriculum Subcommittee meeting of the Brockton School Committee, Tuesday, May 11th. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and state of emergency, on March 12, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order temporarily suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 20. Pursuant to the order, public bodies are temporarily relieved from the open meeting law's requirements that meetings be held in public places open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be held and will be accessible to the public via Brockton Community Access, Brockton Public Schools website, www.bpsma.org, YouTube and Comcast Channel 98, and 1071, the HD version of local access. The public can access this meeting as well via the following link, www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. All right. I'm going to call the roll to establish a quorum. Let's see. I don't think I don't see the mayor. D'Agostino is a yes. Ms. Asak.
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez.
Yes.
Mr. Minicello.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, we are a quorum. So, the agenda for this evening, we have two items, one of which will be a pretty lengthy and is the main purpose of, or the purpose of tonight's meeting is the elementary/middle school curriculum update. And then after that, we'll have time for any other business that needs to come before curriculum. And with that, I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
So thank you. So tonight we're going to spend some time looking at the curriculum updates that have happened throughout the district. But tonight we're going to focus on K-8. And June and her team has prepared presentations for each of the different areas. So you can see the curriculum that we're using, curriculum that we're upgrading to. As you know, part of our Student Opportunity Act, the funding, and our agreement with DESE is to make sure that we continue to upgrade our curriculum and so the teachers have the tools that they need for instruction. So again, this is something that over the years we've cut into curriculum to save jobs, rightfully so. So now that some money's coming in, I just wanted June and her team to go over the curriculum we're using, the upgrades that are happening, and the great work they're doing. And again, this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work for our teachers, especially in the middle of a pandemic, how much they've done with, getting used to Schoology and Teams, uploading and the different things that they've had to do. So, taking on new curriculum is very challenging. It's a lot of work, a lot of PD, but we're going to go over that with you tonight. So I think June's with us via Zoom, and then the different presenters are on Zoom as well.
So, hello, good
June.
evening. Can you see my screen?
We can see you. We don't see your screen.
See me, okay. How's that? How about now?
There you go.
All right, see, I'm
Thank
getting
you.
really good at this. So, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting us here tonight to talk about the work of teaching and learning. The process of selecting high-quality research-based resources for our teachers, as the superintendent has said, for our teachers to use with our students is incredibly important. We have spent quite a bit of time over the past couple of years identifying the resources that we believe best meet the needs of our students, and your commitment, our school committee's commitment to ensuring that our teachers, students in Brockton have access to these best curriculum materials, we definitely believe is going to make a difference to their academic success. And so the members that you're going to hear from this evening, They are members of the K-12 curriculum, K-8, excuse me, curriculum team. And the reason for that is, and I know Melinda will laugh at this, and maybe the superintendent will too, when he told us we had an hour and a half of the agenda tonight, we thought that was a little bit much. But when we started to put things together, we realized that we really have done a tremendous amount of work and that we had lots to talk about. And so this evening you'll hear from K-8 curriculum coordinators, and we will invite the high school and the middle school social studies folks here when we schedule the next curriculum meeting. And so with that, I just wanted to give you a quick overview about some of the things that you're going to be hearing tonight. So on this slide, you'll see that this is basically an overview of Ela and Reading. Again, you'll see K-12 here, but these are the K-8 resources that we will have in place by the beginning of next year. And you'll hear Dr. Andrade and Karen McCarthy talk about foundations and Reach for Reading and the SEI Reach resource. And then Eileen McQuaid has done a tremendous amount of work, and I know you heard her talk about the process for selecting StudySync, and tonight she's going to extend that a little bit and talk about a grant that we're applying for that we hope is going to be able to support the actual implementation and professional development that will be needed to implement StudySync successfully. And then you're going to hear from Dr. Ronan about math. You see TBD there at the top, and you see across what this is 1 through 5. And you'll hear about the process that she's involved with right now and working with a whole group of a lot of teachers on looking at a new math program. And she'll talk to you about how they have been just so willing to engage in that process. You've heard from us about Carnegie Learning Math Solutions, and tonight Melissa Costello is going to give you an update as to where we are with the 6 to 8 resource. You know, this is the first year of full implementation across the district. And then when we have the high school, you'll get to hear from our department head, Dan Corbett, about what we're doing with 9-12 resources. And one thing we're excited about is having that 6-12 vertical articulation and a common resource for our teachers and our students. And then you're going to hear from Heather again, Dr. Ronan, about science and what we're doing with Discovery Ed, Mystery Science. She'll make those connections for you. Discovery Ed is something we've had in the district a long time. Mystery Science is something that our teachers and students have been really responsive to. And what we're excited about is that Discovery Ed has actually purchased Mystery Science. And so that is going to allow us really to be able to have one common resource for our teachers and students. And then you'll hear from Dr. Connors about Amplify Science. Again, not a brand new resource, but a resource that she's excited to talk about tonight because she has been doing some work with the folks at Amplify, and they've made some pretty significant upgrades to their resource that she's excited to share with you this evening. And then we have Miller and Levine Biology, and again, you're going to see that that list is going to grow because David Mangus has been really busy at the high school with the science department at Brockton High, identifying high quality resources that he is looking forward to sharing with you, in addition to Miller and Levine Biology, which is a brand new resource that the high school actually implemented this past year. And so, not to be left out, social studies, again, you're not going to hear about this too much this evening, but I just wanted you to at least be able to get an overview by looking at this grid of the different resources that we have in place, and so that you can see that we really are taking a K-12 approach. And I know I didn't say pre-K, but that's something that is a focus for us, and you'll see that we'll really be digging into that curriculum work really shortly, since we're adding additional pre-K classes. And so finally, my last slide that I just wanted to give you an overview of, and you'll hear about this a bit from the curriculum leaders in the district, is these are what we call our supplemental resources. And so the resources I just shared with you are really our core tier 1 resources. These are the resources meant to supplement learning. So we've had Imagine Learning for a number of years, Level Literacy, ST Math, Raz Kids. Again, you're going to hear about those products from Dr. Andrade and from Karen McCarthy. And then You'll hear about Lexia, Nearpod, Vocabulary, Read 180. And what we're excited about with these resources is that we're really starting to get to a point in the district where we have common resources K-12, but certainly by the end of this year, K-8. And so with that, I'm going to ask that Julie Andrade and Karen McCarthy talk about our resources in Ela and Reading at the elementary level.
Thank you, June. Good evening, I'm Julie Ann Andrade, and I'm the coordinator of Elementary Literacy and Social Studies pre-K to 5. I'm here with Karen McCarthy, who's the coordinator of Title I and the McKinney-Vento liaison, and we're going to be giving you a brief update on our elementary ELA curriculum. Our district core program is Reach for Reading and Reach ELD in grades K to 5. Reach for Reading and Reach provides teachers with a high-quality resource for literacy instruction. Using a strong core program helps us to guarantee standards-based content and provides more equitable instructional experiences throughout the district. We are currently in year 3 of our full implementation of the REACH programs. Next, Foundations is our supplemental phonics program in grades pre-K to 2. Students receive direct and systematic instruction in phonics and other critical literacy foundational skills every day. We are in our 3rd year of full implementation. Karen's going to talk to you about Imagine Learning.
Good evening. My name is Karen McCarthy, and I'm the Title I coordinator and McKinney-Vento homeless liaison for the district. Title I and community schools have partnered to purchase Imagine Learning Language and Literacy, which is an adaptive computer program designed to accelerate reading and language proficiency for students pre-K to 6. It's supplemental to the core curriculum and provides instruction and practice in all 4 domains of literacy: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. In addition, Imagine Learning provides explicit targeted instruction to each student through personalized learning paths and also provides strategic first language support in 15 different languages. The program uses gaming technology to keep students engaged and motivated. And that's one of the strengths of Imagine Learning. Students really like the gaming type of format. Over the past school year, during the in-person closure of schools, usage rates of Imagine Learning jumped significantly. And several teachers have reported that when they introduce a new concept, students will say, "I learned that on Imagine Learning." So Imagine Learning has been a really invaluable resource during the pandemic.
And next, Raz Kids is our supplemental online program that provides students with hundreds of ebooks that they can read or listen to at home or in school. Raz Kids gives students additional opportunities to practice reading skills and choose books based on their own interest and reading level. And finally, recently Karen and I applied for and BPS was awarded the research-based early literacy program grant through DESE. We had noticed that teachers reported to us that students needed more opportunities to apply their phonics skills that they learned in Foundations in Connected Text. Foundations, in conjunction with Great Minds, developed books called Geodes that align directly to the skills taught in Foundations. We'll pilot these materials at 2 elementary schools next year and closely monitor, watching for improved student outcomes. And that concludes our update on elementary ELA. And next is Dr. Heather Ronan, who's going to be presenting to you on math and science.
Good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that? Hopefully.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to update you today on where we are with science and with mathematics. Science is more of an update. We're excited about our updates with Discovery Ed Tech Book, but it is the resource we have been using for a number of years. In 2020, Discovery Education Textbook released an updated version of their current resource, and the newly released version includes a lot of significant improvements. I'm not going to go through all of these with you, but there are some significant improvements for both the student side and the teacher side, including that now the resource is available in both print and digital formats. It was previously only a digital textbook, and now students and teachers will have print versions as well. And they're not just paper versions of the digital format. They really integrate with one another. So if a student is working in their science journal, which is their student workbook, they might see a QR code there. So if they're working on something like volcanoes and there's a QR code in their workbook, they can hover their computer over their QR code and a video of volcanoes can pop up. So it really does work to integrate well together. The new textbook is easier to follow for teachers. The content is organized in more student-friendly terms, and it is more aligned with the Massachusetts standards, anchoring their units in phenomenon. Finally, Mystery Science, as June mentioned, is now part of Discovery Education, which is really exciting for us because Mystery Science, and if you haven't been around kids in a while, if you mention Mystery Doug, every student knows Mystery Doug, really brings science alive through inquiry-based learning. And so Discovery Education has purchased Mystery Science, and that integration is beginning. So now teachers will have Mystery Science right within Discovery Education. So as they released this new version, we took some steps to have teachers become a little more comfortable with it. Again, it's the same resource, but it looks and feels a little bit differently. So we have science leads at every school at every grade level. So currently I have 66 science leads that work with me over the course of the year on various science-related activities, professional development, and decision-making. So the science leads participated in an overview of the new version, highlighting some of those changes. They then worked with their grade level peers and walked them through the new textbook. And then they, in the last couple of months, have started to preview, explore, and teach some of these lessons. Depending on their classroom and how comfortable they were with this, they have the option of going back and forth between the old version and the new version. And then teachers completed a survey to provide some initial feedback on what they thought about the new product. Some of the results, you can see the green pieces are strongly agree and agree. Neutral, we had a lot of teachers that didn't feel like they could, or a few teachers, I should say, it wasn't a lot of teachers, but a few teachers who felt like they didn't get into the new textbook to be able to decide one way or the other, and those who disagree. So the new textbook is better organized than the previous version. As you can see, we have a lot of support for that. The new textbook has engaging and standard aligned lessons for students. Again, very strong. Teachers are looking for more professional development on the new textbook, which is important. And overwhelmingly, teachers would like student books to go along with the new textbook. So that's the update on our Discovery Ed textbook. And I'm going to talk to you about the very thorough process that we've been taking on this year, selecting a new math curriculum. So there's a lot of research on why it is important that we have high quality instructional materials. June referenced this. There's data and research to go along with this, but there's some really startling facts around the importance of a high quality resource. Currently, we have too many students who are not achieving at high standards that are set forth by Massachusetts. We have too few educators that have access to these, or they're spending hours searching for and creating their own resources. There's a greater variation within schools than across schools because teachers are doing different things and not having a common plan for instruction. The opportunity gap is widening for our historically underserved students, which I'm going to talk about. And the research on the importance of high quality instructional materials and elements of effective professional learning, which is also something I'm going to talk about, has been historically either unknown or ignored by many school districts. So this particular problem is significant of students of color and students living in poverty, and that they have less access to high quality standard aligned materials than their peers. Less access, and as you can see, they're less likely to be in classrooms where the assignments are grade level appropriate. So we anchored a lot of our work in our process over the year in equity. And we really spent a lot of time pausing for equity throughout the process. One of the reasons why we're really looking at this right now, Envisions was purchased in 2012, which was 1 year after the Common Core standards were adopted and prior to any curriculum materials being aligned to the new standards. It was renewed for 4 more years as elementary schools prepared to adopt a new core literacy program. And anyone who's ever been an elementary teacher knows that taking on one new curriculum resource is a lot of work and a lot of preparation and requires a lot of planning. Taking on 2 is not reasonable. So we hung on to Envisions, and we've been using it ever since. This was also prior to any reviews being published on Ed Reports. Since our renewal, the current version that we have, which is Envisions 2.2, the reviews have been published and they did not meet expectations. Our contract with Pearson, which is the publisher of Envisions, ends in this June. And although the new version of Envisions, the Envisions Common Core 2021, has met expectations for all 3 gateways in Ed Reports for grades K through 5, it was reviewed by our selection committee, and the selection committee did not recommend it for field testing. So this is our selection committee. These teachers have dedicated a lot of time this year. We met bi-weekly, if not weekly, with lots of homework in between. It was a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of discussions. And we worked very, very closely with the Department of Ed throughout this whole process. You'll also see we really tried to include as many diverse programs that we have in the district so that we could ensure that we are, everyone's voice was being heard. So this is the process that we underwent in collaboration with the Department of Ed and support from June. It was a pretty rigorous process and a thorough process, and currently we are just at the point of selection. So we have done learn and prepare, we have investigated, and we are just about to select. So one of the things that we had to start doing was framing the mindset of the selection committee and recognizing the fact that we're not going to find the perfect program. It doesn't exist. That's an imagined unicorn. But what we are trying to do is really find a program that is strong for our students, for our teachers, for our needs here in Brockton Public Schools. So really try to separate the difference between a strong force and an imagined unicorn. So that was our first step in the learn and prepare. And like I said, we regularly paused for equity, and we did some homework ourselves, reading different research around the opportunities that we need to ensure for our students here in Brockton Public Schools. We then created a vision, a shared vision together, the whole selection committee, and then we established our parameters and our priorities. So our vision was developed with by the entire selection committee. This was, a pretty thorough process, making sure that we really understood what we envisioned strong instructional math instruction to be in the Brockton Public Schools. We set our priorities about what we've been working on. The elementary mathematics department has been working on so many of these aspects of workshop and differentiation and student voice and assessment. And we wanted to make sure that whatever program we were selecting, that it honored that work and honored some of the pedagogy that we know is important for our students. What's important about this is that when we are asking our field testers to provide feedback, the feedback is directly linked to our vision and our priorities. So after part of our investigation is we really took the time to read these outside reviews. We had a process to read the ed reports, to read Massachusetts reviews, which is the curate, and we spent a lot of time going through and reading what they liked about them, what they thought they might have lacked, and understanding their process and their gateway system for reviewing materials. Then we went to an actual materials review. So we then dug out those student books and those teacher manuals, and we went through them through a structured process of looking at those materials. And then finally, the selection committee decided what they wanted to bring forth in field test to say these out of all the materials that we have looked at, we think these ones fit Brockton the best, and we would like to try them in the classroom. So we brought forth two programs, Illustrative Mathematics and Ready Classroom. And when we surveyed the teachers to see what they would be interested in, who would like to participate in field testing, how many people would like to see a new program for our district, how many people would like professional development before the summer, it was overwhelming. It was really great, the enthusiasm from the teachers in Brockton Public Schools. We had over 100 people who said that they would be willing to field test. I just can't underscore the commitment that it has taken these field testers. We had planned to field test earlier when we were going to be field testing remotely, and then we thankfully having students return, but they're returning in stages. And so in order to have a true field test, we needed to wait until all the students were back, which was great. It puts our timeline at a little bit of a disadvantage. And even still, after laying all of this out for the field testers and saying, this is what it's going to require. It's going to require that you participate in professional development for each of the resources. They had an hour training, an hour and a half training today. They had an option of going today or Thursday. They have a 2-hour training tomorrow. They've already had training on Ready Classroom. They have been participating in optional question and answers with the vendors. They provide a feedback form, a daily feedback form, and then a summative feedback form. And then they're going to be participating in the consensus meeting, as well as committing to teaching each one of these programs for 2 weeks apiece. So they're field testing 2 weeks with Ready Classroom. They just finished today, and they're being trained in illustrative mathematics tomorrow, and they will start that field test on Monday. So as you can see, it was a very tight window, and all the field testers, all this information was given to them ahead of time, so they knew they were getting into. And still, we had 62 teachers that said, yes, I'm committed to this process. I will be at all of these trainings. I will provide all that feedback. And we have a really wonderful, diverse group of teachers across the district that have been very committed to this process. So as committed as they have been to this process, we as a district are committed to having an implementation process that's even stronger than our selection process. We know that the selection process, as thorough as it has been and as committed as we are as a district and as committed as our educators have been, that the real work begins after a product is selected. That's when the real work takes place. So we're committed to establishing an implementation and support team made up of teachers, coaches, and administrators to really execute a plan for proper implementation, to make sure that our teachers are supported, to make sure that we are getting the support that we need from our vendors, from our coaches, from our administrators. We're committed to ensuring continuous multi-year professional development. This is a big deal going with a new math program, and it's going to need lots of support, and we're really committed to ensuring that the teachers are supported through high quality professional development. We're committed to honoring collaborative time for teachers to be able to plan and discuss this program with one another. and we are committed to providing ongoing coaching to support teachers, to offer feedback and be thought partners for our educators. It really is, I can't underscore enough the importance and the quality of the instruction and the support that will go into this. And I'm confident that through the coaching, we have fabulous coaches at the elementary level. We have such committed teachers, and they have really been very enthusiastic and committed to this process. I do feel like our implementation process is going to be great. And I do believe that is what we do next, which will determine our success. So that's what I have for elementary math and science. I believe Eileen McQuaid, our associate principal of the Asheville School and our ELA content lead, is ready to go.
Thank you, Heather. Actually, what you just talked about is a really good lead-in to the work that we're doing at the middle school level. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce my partner tonight in presenting, because the middle school ELA implementation of Study Sync is going to be a collaboration, thankfully, with the special education department in grade 6 to 8 and the ESL department in grade 6 to 8. Nori Harris is the third partner. She's not able to meet with us tonight because she has a previous engagement. But Dr. Alves, maybe you'd like to say hello.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Alves. I work for the special education department. And I oversee the special education services for middle school and alternative schools.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now and open up our PowerPoint and move things around so I can see. And oops, slideshow. Here we go. So once again, what Heather talked about really was such a great lead into us. The last time that you saw me at one of these meetings, I had talked to you about how we had just gone through the same process that Heather is going through right now. With the help of DESE and Ed Reports and Curate process, we were able to pilot and select and pilot and choose through consensus with all the ELA teachers, SPED teachers, and ESL teachers. We had 34 teachers, which is a nice percentage, about 35% of the teachers total, who participated in that, and we chose Study Sync as a high quality resource for our Tier 1 instruction in ELA 6 to 8. And as Heather said, so now the real work begins. And so what we're hoping is to get a grant to help us with this. June contacted me in February and told us about this this opportunity, and what we're hoping to do to help us to thoughtfully implement and support teachers with their implementation of this new program is to get the GLEAM grant. So we all work together on this, and the GLEAM grant stands for Growing Literacy Equity Across Massachusetts. Our objective tonight is to have you understand the GLEAM grant purpose and how it can help to improve achievement in ELA and ESL grades 6 to 8.
So the comprehensive literary state development purpose for it is to create a comprehensive program that will advance literacy skills, including pre-literacy skills, reading, writing for children from birth through grade 12, with a heavy emphasis on disadvantaged children, including children living in poverty, English language learners, and children with disabilities. So the GLEAM grant will support districts to create a deep and lasting improvement in ELA and ESL through developing a multi-tiered system of support, MTSS. This multi-tier system of support would provide high-quality core curriculum instruction materials, high-quality assessments, tiered evidence-based interventions and instructional strategies for our students, evidence-based and culturally responsive practices, and will be aligned with high-quality professional learning experiences.
So let's talk about this a little bit deeper. We're hoping that through this grant, and we will be able to implement a multi-tiered system of support. It's a wonderful framework to implement an instructional, to implement StudySync, our new instructional materials. And so if we look at this visual, you'll be able to see in the middle, we've got tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And if you think about tier 1 kind of like a snowman, that's going to be our support. That's the base. That's what holds everything up. And so every student in the district is going to get tier 1 instruction. And if we do it right, using universal supports, then we should have at least 80%, if not more, of our students successfully meeting the standards for tier 1. But what happens if they don't? So then we have to look at tier 2, and that's targeted support. And what we want to remember is that tier 2 is not a student, it's not a label for a student, and it's not a label for a place. Tier 2 is merely research-based, targeted support. It could be a small group lesson. It could be something that you would do in the last part of your class to have a little bit of an intervene with maybe 3 or 4 students who for whatever reason did not get that lesson. So you want to think about tier 2 is that extra targeted support that those kids who didn't meet the standards in tier 1 instruction, and that it doesn't take a long time, and that it's very fluid. Once you get that tier 2 support, you're not labeled a tier 2 student. You just go back and you could possibly even be successful in the next 10 lessons in tier 1. It's just for whatever reason you needed another shot in the arm in order to make it for that one particular standard. So then you've got 80% of the students, and then maybe 20%, hopefully fewer, that get the tier 2. But then there might be a couple of students who don't make the standard, even with that extra bit of support. And in that case, you're going to give them a little bit more support. You're going to take a little bit more time. You're going to maybe have a smaller group or even one-on-one instruction. But I want everyone to understand that we're looking at data to decide whether or not a student needs tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. And we're also looking at this as a very flexible system where a student is not labeled as a tier 2 or a tier 3 student. So now let's go to the outer parts of this. And we can see that we've got universal design for learning and equitable access. And so you remember Heather talked a lot about this when she was talking about implementing a new math program at the elementary level. Equitable access is a big deal. So what does that mean? So what it means is that teachers, they understand that for students in the classroom, there are barriers to them being able to meet standards at certain times. And those barriers are, we have to make everyone understand that those barriers are not the student, but it's environmental, that we have to do something to help those students meet the tier 1 or to meet the standards within the classroom. And so what does that mean for universal design? And we know that there are strategies that help us to leverage the power of digital technology, and it helps us to provide students with a multiple means of engagement. In other words, we're engaging all students. It helps us to get a multiple means of representation so that we're presenting information in ways that all students learn. And it's also giving us multiple means of engagement or presentation. Students get options for what they know and being able to show the teacher what they know and what they understand. So those are multiple means of action is what we need to say for that last one. So teachers are going to need support in how to use these strategies for universal design for learning so that our tier 1 is really, really strong, and we are not having too many students who need this kind of intervention. And now if we look at the outside of the circle, of course, if you're going to be able to be successful, you need leadership drivers, people in the schools who work to make sure that we're all on the same page. We all have a vision. We have shared decision making with teachers and associate principals and principals and lead teachers in common planning time and PLCs. That we all know what we need to do, and we know our next steps in order to get there. We also know that we need implementation drivers. Implementation drivers, that is things like a good tier 1 instructional materials, right? So you have to have good curriculum materials in order to make this tier 1 as strong as it can be. And that's why we have Study Sync. It also means that you have to have the correct schedule to make sure that, you can have enough time to teach that and using that curriculum materials. You have to have good database decision-making tools, and you have to have the right staffing. So all of those things are involved in the implementation drivers. And then the competency drivers, that's the professional development that we're going to need. How do we teach in ways that universally are designed to meet the needs of all of our learners? We need to focus on our professional development, including things like peer review and instructional rounds, looking at data, giving each other feedback, and working to meet the needs of everybody. So once again, if we go back to that metaphor about the snowman, you've got that strong base for tier 1, you have that can hold up the tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, but if you don't have the right weather and the right conditions, then none of this is going to work. You need a good, strong curriculum materials and schedule. You need good leaders, and you need good PD to make it happen. So that's the multi-tiered system of support that we hope that the GLEAM grant is going to help us to implement so that Study Sync works for all of our students.
So what was the purpose for writing the GLEAM grant proposal for Brockton? So you understand that we've already sort of decided on Study Sync, and we want to roll Study Sync out, and that's going to support our students. But again, as Eileen mentioned, that with curriculum, we have to start thinking outside the box and thinking about not just the curriculum instruction, but also how we're going to support the students that are lagging behind or the students that need that extra support. So that's how the multi-tiered system is really going to support us. So the GLEAM grant is also going to help us, establish those tiered instructions. So how this all came about is that Eileen and her team originally applied for and were awarded the GLEAM planning grant. So the GLEAM planning grant allowed us to, again, have stipends for staff members and support to get together and start to look at the proposal and start working together on writing a comprehensive grant so we can actually win the grant. So the team was put together. We met over a series of a few months and weekly to write and revise the grant. And then we also met with desk and office hours for support in writing the grant and different portions of the grant. But some of you who haven't wrote a grant before, there's a lot that goes into it. There's many different parts, and grants really ask us to really sort of kind of spell out our purpose, our goals, what we really want to do, and how this grant is really going to support our students here in the district. So then we also met with the stakeholders. We met with the teachers, the associate principals, the district leaders, so we can have everyone on board to roll out and submit this grant for our students. So finally, what we'll be doing on May 13 is uploading the grant proposal to Destiny. So, sorry. The GLEAM grant writing team, again, the planning was funded, and the planning team consisted of about 20 people, 3 team leaders, including myself, Frank Alves, Special Education Department Head, Honoria Harris, ESL Coach, Eileen McQuaid, Associate Principal at Ashfield, and ELA Content Lead. District administrators that were also involved were Kelly Jones, Karen McCarthy, and Dr. Andrew. There were also 14 teachers from ELA, ESL, and the special education departments that joined us devoted their time to help us revise and offer their voice and their opinions and their support toward this grant. Those teachers, we just wanted to recognize Jean Monty, Kathleen Wilkinson, Samoa Azani, Sarah Cameron, Linda Callahan, Mary Henry, Naomi Cohen, Taja Wood, Jason Reynolds, Kelly Cooper Silva, Nina West, Lindsay Costanzan, Cheryl Kearns, and Kimberly Kearns.
They were a great team. And so here's the proposal that we came up with. As Heather stated before when she was talking about math, it takes a long time to implement a program correctly and to make sure the kids are successful. And so what we like about this grant is it's giving us some time to really think and flesh out a 3-year plan. This is our three-year plan. In the first year, we're going to get support for high-quality professional development for the culturally relevant implementation of Tier 1 curriculum Study Sync. And then the grant is going to give us an expert literacy leader who's going to work with schools to do a needs assessment to see what's the condition, what level are they at, how effective is their multi-tiered system of support at each school. That's all in year 1. Year 2, of course, we have to continue implementing Tier 1 Study Sync with feedback and going back and relearning the better ways to implement doing lessons and looking at data, etc. And then we're going to begin the work of implementing multi-tiered system of support based upon what the needs assessment said in each school. And so what kinds of things do we anticipate we'll be doing? Lots of PD on universal design for learning improvements, and maybe scheduling, maybe coming up with a menu of lessons that teachers could use for Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. But we also know that we're going to have to identify, pilot, and purchase assessments and other materials for Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. StudySync will probably be able to give us a few ideas for Tier 2 and 3 interventions, but it will not meet all of our needs. So we're going to identify, pilot, and purchase assessments and materials for Tier 2 and Tier 3 in that second year. In year 3, we're going to continue to implement Tier 1 Study Sync and continue to the work of implementing our multi-tiered system of instruction, focusing on universal design. But finally, this grant will help us to purchase and implement assessments and/or materials that we piloted in the second year. We'll purchase them in the third year. So that's our 3-year plan. So
overall, the grant is going to bring some money to Brockton for our students, an estimated total of $600,000. Year 1, $185,000 for professional development on Study Sync, literacy experts, MTSS assessment. Year 2, $247,000 for PD on Study Sync, MTSS, literary experts, and to purchase Tier 2 and Tier 3 curriculum materials. And year 3, $172,000 for PD on Tier 2 and 3 curriculum, Study Sync, MTSS, and literacy expert.
So when do we find out if we're awarded the GLEAN grant? We find out in June. And we're really excited about this prospect, not just because it's given us a vision for how we want to implement Study Sync, but also because of this collaboration between ESL department and the special ed department and the ELA department, so that teachers and buildings are going to get a unified message to help them to implement Study Sync and improve ELA achievement in grades 6 to 8 across the city. So thank you very much for your time, everybody. And now I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Melissa Costello. She's the Associate Principal at East Middle School, and she's also the content lead for math. So let me just end the show and let me stop the share.
Thanks, Eileen.
You're welcome.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you some updates about our middle school math curriculum from this year. So this was our first year of implementation of both components for middle schools. We did adopt it. All of the schools have taken this on this year. We purchased the printed text and ebook, as well as our Mathia software. This was a very highly rated program on EdReports. It has received almost perfect scores across the board. And the program consists of both math solutions, which includes your math book. That is a consumable textbook. All of our students have had that this year, whether they were remote or in person. And this allows students to be recording their understanding. It allows them to collaborate together and provide students an opportunity to practice. Mathia is the online platform that personalizes instruction based on how students learn over time. Students work independently in Mathia with intelligent software that adapts based on students' responses and provides some coaching and scaffolding embedded in the program. And then from that, teachers are able to access data reports to better understand where students are struggling and offer some remediation. So this year for our training and supports, we were able to utilize our Carnegie Learning coaches. They supported teachers a couple of times in their classrooms. They visited their PLC groups and worked with grade level teams there. And during those, they gave overviews of the modules and went over how to read Mathia data reports. We also had some department in-services earlier in the year. And at those, we did some initial Carnegie training, and we looked at how to read, again, those, utilize the Mathia data reports, and also some training on Braining Camp. Looking ahead, we made some good steps in the right direction by selecting a high-quality resource that does provide some equity across for all middle school students. But moving forward, for this implementation to be successful, the middle schools really do need a consistent district vision for mathematics, as well as some building-based teacher supports. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Connors.
Thank you very much. I am honored to pull up the end of the presentations. You all are a tough act to follow. So Tracy's going to work my PowerPoint for me, so I appreciate that. We'll give her just a minute to pull it up. I will just say this ideally would be our third year of Amplify implementation. But as you will see, we're still basically in year one, thanks to COVID. So just as a reminder, when last I came before you was just a little over a year ago, letting you know the process for piloting, adopting, and our plan for implementation for Amplify Science. Much of what Dr. Ronan, Eileen McQuaid, what everyone has showed you about our process for selecting and piloting and implementing, we followed that same process as well for middle school science. Our fall and winter plan of last school year to support teachers in our first full year of implementation was off to a great start in September, October, and January with our traditional half-day in-services for our content areas at the middle school level. December, we did have 2 days of walkthroughs planned with our Amplify Science partners. And you may recall that we were canceled due to snow. I believe that was actually when Superintendent Thomas was named interim superintendent, was one of those days. So we had walkthroughs planned. And then March 2020, COVID hit. And we pivoted. At late April, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education released priority standards for grade levels, you may recall. Amplify Science is a spiraled curriculum, so grade 6 science is not grade 6 science standards. It's a combination of grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8. So students are exposed to these standards multiple times over the 3-year period, because the Science MCAS is not a grade level test, it is a grade span test of 6 through 8. So if we were to only teach grade 6 science standards in grade 6, by the time we get to grade 8 science and a 6 through 8 Science MCAS, our students would have to do a great deal of review and actually lose out on new learning. So when DESE released those priority standards, we collectively as a middle school science department said we need to step away from the use of Amplify for 2 main reasons. 1, our standards in Amplify are not aligned that way. And number 2, we're not prepared to use Amplify in a fully remote environment. And that's a fair statement. That's not about the teachers. It's not about Amplify. It's the reality of where we were. We were brand new in implementing a program. And Amplify wasn't prepared to do remote work, nor were we at the time. Throughout the summer, I met multiple times with our partners at Amplify to keep track of what are we doing to pivot to a remote, possibly hybrid teaching and learning situation. They were phenomenal. The work that Amplify Science did to change their entire platform to support teachers and especially students during a global pandemic was nothing short of inspirational in the work that they were able to do. So through that, we were able to spend some time in September, on September 3rd and 4th. Teachers were provided with very specific guidance to work in either grade level teams or independently through self-directed prompts to explore what Amplify Science had done over the summer to pivot their curriculum platform to a remote setting. On September 11th, we did have professional development that was directed by Amplify to really provide direct support for teachers in using what we now came to call Amplify at Home. In October, we had a half-day PD with Amplify for our in-service day, and we have had department meetings October, January, February, and March that was also led by Amplify. Please note, though, that all of this PD, as you know, has been remote, so our teachers have not been able to be together in the same room really handling the materials. Amplify Science is hands-on, and so we've missed a lot of that PD and support for in-person. So in looking ahead and reviewing where we've come this year, I give Amplify and our science teachers, there's not enough words to give the credit that they deserve. Amplify has really supported us in pivoting to a remote and then hybrid teaching and working with the teachers and how to do that. It has not been easy. Again, Amplify is a hands-on curriculum. So in looking ahead to next year and working with Amplify, I said I've got some key considerations that we need to take into account as we put this plan together. We have to remember teachers were in the very early stages of implementation when we were hit with COVID, and we had to fully step away. So we lost an entire year of implementation in our first year. Professional development, as I mentioned, and direct support has focused on literally what we need right now to continue to teach our students and to do it well with Amplify. So it was not at all about using the resource as it was initially planned and purchased. It's about how do we just use it right now in the situation that we're in. Probably one of the most critical features going forward is that 5 of our 7 middle schools have sustainable improvement plans. And it's very important to me as an instructional leader, and I know the leadership teams in all the schools, that we find ways to show that the work we're doing in Amplify Science directly connects to their sustainable improvement plans. It's not something different. Give you a very quick example. I had the opportunity to work with South Middle School and their science teachers and the leadership team because part of their sustainable improvement plan is about universal design for learning. And there was this disconnect of we have to do UDL and we have to do Amplify Science and it's too much. And it was a legitimate concern on behalf of the teachers. And so what they needed was just for all of us to come to the table and say, guess what? Amplify is actually based on UDL. UDL is the dinner plate. Amplify is the meal that sits on that plate. And so that was a very huge learning point for me to say to Amplify, we need to know all the features. We need to connect this work to sustainable improvement plans so that the teachers can see that very purposefully. And then we were fortunate, we did have some new staff come on board during COVID, and with this budget, I know we are bringing new teachers on board, so we have to consider how do we onboard them to this new program. So those are the 4 key points we took into consideration when coming up with the following plan. Okay, this is just a plan. We do not have a PD calendar yet, so what Alicia Harrington and I did, Alicia is my Amplify partner, as we looked at the last full traditional school year that we had and when we had in-service time and department meeting time, and tried to base it off of that. We talked about early September and having just an onboarding session for any new faculty or faculty that wants just kind of a refresher on the basics of Amplify. Then we worked on a series of very purposeful, aligned professional development to support teachers that would begin, the cycle would begin with walkthroughs in September. And so when you see on-site for 2.5 days, that would involve the leadership teams at each middle school, Amplify support staff, walking to teachers' classrooms, not in an evaluative manner at all, but to see how are you using Amplify and gathering data on what supports teachers need so that we can continue to plan our professional learning. It also provides direct teacher support in those initial stages of those first units. We would do another round of those walkthroughs in January and another round of those in late April, early May. The half day, so the 2.5 days of walkthroughs, then the half day connected to that would ideally be a half day of in-service where we bring that data to the teachers and we talk about what we saw and plan next steps together so that teachers have a voice in their professional learning. Following the walkthroughs in September, for example, September and October, then we move to coaching sessions. Now, these coaching sessions that would happen 3 times a year are specific to the 5 middle schools and sustainable improvement plans so that we can provide that, for lack of a better word, this is the teacher me, the direct instruction to those teachers and to the leadership teams to support the work of their school improvement plans. The work that we're doing in science classrooms has to connect to the turnaround practices, and we need to be very purposeful in showing teachers how the work they're doing is not just another thing that we're adding to their plate. Ideally, those coaching sessions would occur during already established PLC times during the school day. And like I said, walkthroughs would happen, then the coaching sessions. And so that's why you see 3 sessions of these 1-hour coaching. And then the final piece of this cycle are 2 strengthening sessions where we bring all 7 middle schools together to strengthen practices, analyzing student work, formative assessments. I'm super excited about the whole thing. That's kind of the nerd in me. But I'm really excited about the literacy-based sessions. I kind of grew up as a leader at Brockton High School, and our focus on literacy is what helped turn Brockton High School around. And I'm a firm believer that literacy across the curriculum is important. So we know that by focusing on literacy in our science classes, we're supporting students across all curriculum areas. As they're analyzing complex texts, they are writing in science, they are using critical thinking skills in their science seminar and their engineering internships, which are part of Amplify. So just as a quick overview, a little visual, the walkthroughs would happen 3 times a year. After a walkthrough would come a coaching session directed specifically towards our schools that are on sustainable improvement plans. And then following the coaching sessions would be the strengthening sessions. Thank you. Any questions? I tried to make that quick. I told June I wanted like an hour tonight. She just said, not possible.
You
Any
did
questions?
actually say that, Michelle, and you stayed way within your time frame, and we're actually under time and left time for questions too. But I just like to say, I'm sure you can all hear tonight that there's been a tremendous effort by the curriculum leaders in the district. And it's really been a dynamic effort. And when I think about everything that we've all had to contend with in the past year, keeping the work moving forward has really been something I think the district should be proud of. And it's really a result of, again, some of the folks you heard tonight, some you'll hear in a couple of weeks. And obviously, our teachers out there, they just keep working and moving forward. And as much as COVID has slowed us down, as Michelle said, we've also managed to keep the work moving forward. And I heard, every single person who spoke tonight talked about the professional learning and how important it is that we have a plan in place for ongoing support for our teachers. And so we kind of left this part of the night for you if you wanted to ask us, any one of us, any questions. We wanted to give you that opportunity.
Well, first I want to thank the curriculum team that presented to us tonight. I appreciate all the time and effort that you put into this. Obviously, this was a detailed presentation. We certainly appreciate that. I know I have a couple of quick questions or items, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, so I'll try and be quick so that we can make sure everybody has a few minutes. June, I think it was during your presentation, but I might have been wrong about that, so I apologize if I am. There was one place where you mentioned that the new curriculum or tool or what have you had more student-friendly terms. So I'm just curious, so what was it like before? You know, you gave some example of student-friendly terms.
That was mine, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It was the evaluate, explore, examine, and now it's it's wonder. I have to remember it off the top of my head. Wonder, learn, and share.
Gotcha. Okay, so just different words to search by that might be a little more friendly to a student. Okay. All right. So, now there was also Envision you had mentioned wasn't recommended for field testing. I was just curious as to what was was there any particular things about it that made them, not recommend it? Not that I know anything about the product. I'm just curious, what about it made it unappealing to use?
Yes, they really felt like there wasn't a significant improvement between the version that we're using now and the version that they have reshaped into meeting those expectations. There wasn't enough focus on student discussion, student inquiry. It wasn't based on inquiry problem solving. So they felt like it was much more traditional, and to be frank, they've been using it and they've already recognized the limitations, and they thought it was just a lot of what we have been using dressed up a little bit. So they were not recommending it for field testing, and that was pretty unanimous.
That makes sense, right? It wasn't enough of a improvement in the new model to make it worth going for. All right, and finally, I kind of have this question about all of this, right? Because I know that these products are certainly not cheap. And so and we've talked about this a lot on the committee, with these funds that we're getting, obviously this all has to, at some point, result in an increase in and improving student outcomes and student achievement. So can you, and again, any one of you can jump in here, kind of tie, all of the different things that you showed us tonight back to how it will improve student outcomes?
So, others can jump in, but just to start off, Mark, because that is a great question, is that we recognize the resource is the high quality resources. We know what research tells us about high quality research based resources and the impact it has on student learning, improved student learning outcomes. However, we also recognize, and I think you heard every single person say this evening, that the resource is only as good as the implementation of the resource. And so it's really about our teachers and giving them the high quality resources they need to be able to, it's not so much about them improving instruction, but them having the instructional materials that really allow them to meet the needs of our students. And so how we support our teachers in this implementation through professional learning, ongoing coaching, giving them lots of opportunities for professional dialogue with one another on a consistent basis is going to be critical. Because again, I think you've heard every single person tonight say, we're excited about these resources and we're so excited about the support that we're getting for moving forward with these resources. At the same time, we're only at the beginning stages of this work. And I think, again, you heard Michelle Connors talk about the implementation of Amplify and how it was disrupted through the pandemic. People kept moving forward. I think we all saw that. We're so grateful for our teachers. But at the same time, we didn't have that opportunity to really support teachers through instructional coaching, consistent opportunities for professional dialogue, really giving them lots of opportunity for looking at student learning data. That's going to be critical. Again, you heard about sustainable improvement plans. That's all part of the work of PLCs. And so all of these resources that we're looking at, one critical element, and I know this was part of every single team considered this, and it was an important element, is that these resources had to have a strong assessment piece. And there had to be a way for us to really monitor student progress. And so we do that in a number of ways, not just MCAS. The resources themselves have internal assessments, and then we also have our district-based benchmarks. And so we're pretty confident that with the right infrastructure and the support that we need to really implement these resources well and support our teachers and really monitor, and that's going to be critical. Like, we have to monitor for correction, but monitor for support. Like, how are we making sure that we're really supporting our educators and using these resources well? And again, everyone here tonight can speak to that.
Great. Thank you. Any other members of the committee have questions or comments? Mr. Minicello?
Hi, June, and that was a great presentation by your colleagues. How much of this has been, I guess, introduced and implemented, and what is the reception you're getting from the teachers in terms of using these new resources and tools? And obviously, it's new in terms of effectiveness, so the proof will be in the results down the road, but what has been the reception so far in implementation?
Well, I think that I'd have to just ask the different folks that are really out there working directly with the teachers to speak to that. But I know for me, I've been able to get out into schools over the past couple of weeks, thankfully, and visit classrooms and talk to teachers and kids specifically about the math pilots that are going on out there. And I have been tremendously impressed with how excited the teachers are about really being sort of the pioneers for this work. And the kids are right there with them. And so we're relying a lot on our students to tell us, hey, this is a thumbs up. Is this a great curriculum? And going through those elementary classrooms in the past couple of weeks, I can't tell you how many kids have literally looked up and said, we love this math resource, and it's brand new to them. And so that, I think, those are our best consumers right there, our students. So that's my piece. So if anyone else wants to jump in.
I'll say that in ELA 6 to 8, we had almost very close to, well, we had consensus of every single person who piloted, but everybody who did not pilot, I haven't heard anything negative about that. And then when I had to do the presentation to the entire ESL and ELA departments about the GLEAN grant, we did a little survey at the end, and 99% of them thought that all of the work with the GLEAN grant would be really important to their professional development, and so they were excited and looking forward to it.
And I think the other important thing that's happening right now, as much as we can without sort of sending teachers too many surveys, because I know they're getting surveyed a lot, but we are constantly seeking feedback from our teachers about these resources. And I know that Heather shared some of that data with you. So overwhelmingly, we've seen positivity toward moving forward with these new resources. And that's something we've been doing for a number of years.
Do we have, I guess, enough infrastructure and staff available, you know, for a, I guess, implementation of all of the new curriculum tools? And
So is Aldo there? Block his ears. I'm just kidding. No, we don't have enough infrastructure, but we're working toward that. You've seen the superintendent has come to you over the past couple of weeks and put forward a plan that, you know, and I think he says it all the time. It's not going to take, it's going to be more than a year. This is a multi-year plan, but the infrastructure is going to be critical. And so being strategic about where that infrastructure needs to start, I think is going to be an important next step for us. And we're making those steps. And so we're grateful that we have that SOA money that's going to help support moving us forward. And the ESSER money is going to help us with securing these resources.
okay, and is there any difference, I guess, where we have a very large ELL population? How does this, I guess, improve teaching and learning for that segment of our student population? Or does it all sort of translate?
I can speak to that. I can speak to that, certainly. StudySync, the program that we bought, is one of the biggest reasons why we bought StudySync is because it supports English language learners. It has an entire parallel program so that students are learning all of the same standards, but they are using, there's a different sort of blade, they call it, within the program, and students in ELL are getting targeted supports that they would need in order to meet the standards. So it's the first time that we've had like a program that is comprehensive enough to meet the needs not only of our ELA students, but of our ESL students. And the ESL teachers, when they saw it, they were over the moon, because for years they've been, you know, creating, as with the ELA teachers, spending hours and hours creating these materials. When they looked at StudySync, they're like, oh, that's there, and they have it, and they have it. And so what it's going to do, I think, is to bring everybody together on the same page and to really kind of move our kids in ESL so that they can maybe more quickly go into the mainstream ELA classes.
Okay, I mean, that sounds great, because
That's
go ahead.
very important for all the resources, Tom. One of the things that I think back when we selected REACH for reading, one of the drivers of that decision was connected to the fact that we were using REACH for our ELs, and we wanted there to be consistency for kids who were, you know, sort of transitioning between programs. And I know Heather was going to jump in and talk about math.
Yeah, so, but just to kind of piggyback on what Eileen said, it was a major priority for us in the selection process that this had to fit the needs of our English language learners. It is one of our top priorities. Our feedback goes back to that. And in mathematics, we always talk about low floor, high ceiling tasks, where all students have access to those tasks, these grade level tasks, and those tasks are able to be extended to meet our most dedicated, driven, high succeeding learners. So we have those students who need those supports and those ones who are taking off, and they're doing grade level standards So that's really important to us, as well as our supplemental resource, which is ST Math, where there is it's spatial temporal math is what it's called, and there is zero language in it, and it's all visual. So.
Well, I guess that's good to hear, because as you may recall, we pointed out that, our population is very diverse. So sometimes, a one-size-fit-all program may not be effective for everyone. And it's kind of refreshing or nice to hear that some of the curriculum tools or improvements in programming, allow for common introduction with different sort of variable adjustments based on, what population you're using, but the fundamental program is effective for, ELA, general ed, ELL, ESL students. So that's kind of refreshing and nice. I mean, I know, Ms. Saber, over the years, when our budgets have been lean, you've called for the investment in curriculum, and the school committee always listened to you and had faith in your suggestions, but unfortunately we didn't have the pocketbook, as they say. We had a beer pocketbook with champagne taste, but now things are getting a little bit better. But if there is something that would benefit some of those other, some of our different populations, we certainly don't want us just settle on a one-size-fits-all for everyone. If in fact there's something that we could invest in that will get us, even better results for certain populations or segments of our student body. So I guess, keep knocking on our door if there's curriculum or things that you feel that will improve, the academic experience for all of our students, at all of our different populations, because we have so many and they're so unique. So thank you for obviously caring about getting rid of some of the old curriculum and having faith in the data and bringing in the new introductions, because this will hopefully rise the tide and bring the results of the Brockton Public Schools where we want them to be for all of our students. So a very nice presentation, and we will talk to the superintendent about it, and Mr. Petronio, who loves to spend money, about implementation and infrastructure to support what you're doing, because we know how important it is to get those results up, and sometimes with investment it takes some money to see the results. So we appreciate what you did, and thank you for that report.
All right, any other members? Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, I was asking about the Gleam grant. June, is that you I should talk to, or Eileen? Eileen, you still there?
Or Eileen? I think everybody's still with us. We've still got 15 people. Eileen, can you hear us?
We couldn't really hear you.
June, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
I was wondering about the Gleam grant. I know you're not going to apply for it on the 13th, still a couple of days away. But what's your feeling as far as, do you think that's going to be approved for Brockton Public Schools?
Did you ask me what's my feeling about whether or not we will get the grant?
Yes, the Gleam grant.
Yes, the Gleam grant. Well, we hope so. I have to tell you, we had an amazing team of teachers helping us to write this, and they helped us make a really strong proposal. And so we feel confident. We really do. And we're just keeping our fingers crossed and hoping for the best.
And even if we don't get the grant, there was so much work put into drafting the proposal that we have a framework for the actual work. So yes, we want the grant. Lots of people did a lot of hard work in obviously drafting that grant, but the real work was not just writing the grant, but it was the planning that went into it. And so we're confident that the grant is a strong proposal. And so I was thinking about that as we were talking to you about it tonight. What if we don't get it? Well, what if we don't get it? You know, the plan B is that we look at the elements in that grant that we are actually able to implement regardless of whether or not we get it, because that's the work that needs to happen anyway.
June, I know that they said June you'll find out. Do you have a date on that in June?
No, they didn't give us a date. They just said in June. So-
Okay. June, I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. It was really good. Thank you.
Thank you to this whole team. They did a lot of work in a
Yeah, you
real
could
short
see-
amount of time. Yeah, actually, they've been doing a lot of work in a long period of time, but putting this together over a really short.
Oh, you could tell.
period of
There
time.
was a lot of work put into it. Thank you.
All set, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
All right, we have Mr. Rodriguez.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. Two-part question. At what point do we determine that the curriculum that's implemented is not working? And then what is the actual guideline of when you're searching for a curriculum and knowing that this is going to be the best curriculum to reach that student achievement?
And so I think we talked a little bit about that earlier, Mr. Rodriguez, in saying that we're going to have to closely monitor the implementation of the curriculum. And when I say that, it's really through that coaching model and having a tight assessment model so that we can be, as a district, paying lots of attention to what the impact of these resources are on student outcomes. You heard Eileen talk earlier about MTSS and Tier 1 instruction, and what we all know right now is Tier 1 instruction is where kids need to be getting most of what they're receiving in terms of teaching and learning. And then after that, how are we supporting students if we see that there are gaps that are starting to reveal themselves? How are we reacting to that? And it's through supplemental. I talked a little bit about those supplemental resources, but to your question is, like, when do we make that decision? I mean, we have to look at the implementation of a resource over really a 5-year period, because you can't get really good data in 1 year, not for anything. And it's really because there's always what they call, when you implement a new resource, is what they call an implementation dip. And that's because people are getting used to new resources. That doesn't mean that's definitely going to happen. It doesn't always happen. It sometimes happens. And that's sort of like a known phenom in the field. But at the same time, we recognize that as a district, the number one priority for us has to be supporting our teachers in being able to use these resources effectively. And that means we have to give them the time, the space, and the support to be able to do that. And then, again, we've been very intentional with the superintendent's support about looking at long-term contracts, meaning we're not just committing to a resource for a year. We're saying, okay, we're going to give this 5 years. And you heard everybody talk about the extensive process that they use to select that resource. So having that kind of confidence in a resource puts you in a better place to start using something that's new, because you know you went through this really extensive process for the selection of that that resource. And these are research-based resources, so that we've been able to look at data in other places where these resources have been used successfully. And one thing that we always look for is we look for what the success is with students of a similar demographic as our students. So, I mean, again, we can't, 100%, but I think this team is really confident about the resources.
And I think, Tony, another part is that you obviously have to give it time, and you have to look at the assessments. But another thing is you got to get constant feedback from teachers who are using these materials every day in their classrooms, and you have to listen to what they have to say after using these materials and see the results, how they feel about it, because something that might we might think is great, and then all of a sudden it's put into practice, and a year or two goes by, and they come back and say, it's just, we're not feeling this. And you have to give it time, but I think on top of the assessments, I think you have to listen to feedback from the people that are actually implementing this and using the materials every day in classrooms with kids, and talk to them constantly and get their feedback about how it's working.
And if I could just add too, coupled with that feedback, and June had mentioned this, and I think it was pretty evident through all of our presentations tonight, is that support for the teachers in the implementation. We can't just give them a new resource and say, here you go, just read it and implement it. We have to be beside them to demonstrate how it needs to be implemented. We need to hear their feedback based, what do they need to continue successful implementation? And we need to be able to pivot if things aren't working and provide that additional layer of support. And I just, middle school science, just as a reminder, is a grade span test. So we're not going to see, I don't anticipate seeing a tremendous gain in our grade 8 science MCAS scores for 3 years, because you want your students to have a full 3 years with the Amplify program to get a really good exposure and understanding of those 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards. So we cannot consider this last year and a half any real implementation with Amplify, because we've really just been trying to meet the needs of the teachers and the students in a remote environment. But I do believe that with the support that we've proposed, beginning with the upcoming school year for teachers, and really looking at our grade 6 students and starting, they kind of begin our baseline of moving forward and monitoring the internal assessments, as June had mentioned, that Amplify provides in our district assessments. We monitor it and we meet the students' needs. We'll be in good shape. But yeah, it's definitely a 3 to 5 year minimum.
But if we could go by Aldo's rationale, if it had a warranty, like a dishwasher or a refrigerator, money gap guarantee, I mean, that's, that would help as well. So Aldo likes to point that out often. He doesn't mind buying it, but he'd like a guarantee, a warranty to come with it. So if it doesn't work, you can get rid of it and
Put in
don't
for a
have to
refund.
pay.
Thank you, everyone. Great job on the presentations from everybody that presented tonight.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. June and your team, thanks. I appreciate everything you put into this. I know how hard it is, how much work it is, how much time you spend on this, and again, all the work that you all have done, but also the work the teachers have done implementing curriculum as they were trying to teach remotely during a pandemic, and then hybrid, and then full in person, and learning new learning management system, and then curriculum at the same time. And it's a ton of work. So thank you all.
All right. Well, and in the name of time, I'm going to wrap it up there. If any member of the committee feels they had any questions they didn't get a chance to ask or get answered, feel free to email our presenters and get the information you need. So I'll just, under other business, wrap things up. Again, I want to thank June, Heather, Eileen, Dr. Connors, Frank, and Melissa for joining us tonight and giving us a good amount of your time this evening after having worked all day as well yourselves. So I want to remind the members of the committee, please check your email. There is a doodle link. We're trying to get that final diversity training scheduled, and so we need to get that retreat date nailed down, so please make sure you do that. And I want to thank Cynthia and Melinda for working together and with me on trying to get that scheduled. So as the weather gets warmer and we get into the further into May and the end of the year, the scheduling is getting a little tighter, so I appreciate both of you for helping with that. And finally, I want to make sure that we wish School Committee Member Rodriguez a happy birthday this evening, the big 4-3.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose because I get to embarrass you again in about an hour.
Thank you.
So, all right. So if there is nothing else under business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Mrs. Sullivan / Mr. Minicello, seconded by Ms. Asak. I'll call the roll. Mayor Sullivan?
Yes.
The vice chair says yes. Ms. Asak?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Minicello?
Yes, and you can give Ms. Sullivan the credit for that motion to adjourn. I will back off on that one and defer to Ms.
Thank you.
Sullivan.
I didn't want to have any controversy tonight. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
All right, thank you for your time on the curriculum subcommittee. We'll take like 2 minutes and get right back in for finance. Thank you.